I have been hollering for a very long time now that the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, NHL, any semi-professional league, professional league basically needs to overhaul how they do the playoffs. And the NBA this year is a perfect example of that necessity. First of all, the potential of having a team in with a losing record should upset anybody. The NBA needs to just take the best 14 teams. You don't need over half of the league getting into the playoffs. That's first and foremost. You take the best 14 teams. Number one, you make the playoffs that much more desirable. I need to win more games in order to get in. And if we had the best 14 teams right now, instead of East and West, and just had 14 teams, the worst team to get in from the East would be the Pistons, and the worst team to get in from the West would be debatable on whether or not it's the Grizzlies or the Warriors. For whatever reason, and look, it's not a whatever reason. I know what it is, okay? It's having a banner, something that you can make money on. The Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. You have a logo, you can make money on it. You have an Eastern Conference champion. It's a pride thing for the players, but it's really just something that you can slap a logo on. And when you can slap a logo on something, you can make money on that logo. That's legitimately all this amounts to. And I get frustrated because I understand. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. I get it. It's the oldest adage in the book. But for me, we need to take it a step further and remember that the fans are what make the game the game. First, you have the players, and without the players, you have no fans. If you have no fans, you have no money. And I understand that this time of year, you're going to get money predicated upon necessity. Simultaneously, I think if we make it more palatable for a general audience, well, that just intensifies and increases your audience, and it intensifies their involvement. The term fan, obviously, as we know, is short for fanatic, obsessive. You create more fanatics when you make the game more palatable. Hey, the best 14 teams are getting in. Boom. Division champion, doesn't matter. There's no automatics anymore. You have to be a good basketball team to get in, at least decent enough to be above 500. Because there's no reason a team with 39 wins should be looking at the possibility of making the playoffs. They're not going to make a run. Nothing spectacular is going to happen. There are going to be no miracles. We're not going to see them win the NBA Finals. That's all there is to that. There should be no teams with a losing record. Well, Andrew, your ideology is flawed. What happens if 14 teams, one of them has a losing record? Every now and again, things are going to happen. But if we minimize the amount of teams that we're letting in, then we minimize the possibility of a losing record happening. We have tiebreakers in place. We have all this stuff that's there for a reason. You don't need a play-in tournament in order to and here's the thing. You've got 7 and 8 seeds vying for a playoff position in a play-in tournament, both of them with winning records, and they're going to get slided for a team with a losing record. How does that make any sense to anybody? It shouldn't. It shouldn't make sense to the NBA. It shouldn't make sense to a casual fan, a true fanatic. It shouldn't make sense to anybody. But here we are. All right, real quick here. Nick Saban, he was discussing what's been going on with Nico in Tennessee and really just kind of in general. And what he was talking about was, he said, look, nowadays when you recruit players, 70 to 80% of them simply ask, what guarantees do I have that I'm going to play? How much money can you promise me? Well, first of all, what did anybody think was going to happen? If they want to play, that's nothing new. And I think Nick Saban knows that. But he also knows that a good majority of people do not know what it's like to recruit. He knows that a good majority of guys are going to be asking, what guarantees do I have to start right away? See, before the NIL and before the transfer portal, Nick Saban could say, look, here's the thing. You've seen our team play. You've got X guy in front of you. You may have to wait a little bit. But if you compete, maybe you'll get some playing time. But right now, we're going to be loyal to this guy. He could throw that out there. But he could say, look, what we're going to do is we're going to redshirt you, and we're going to spend that time developing you and preparing you to be the absolute best. I've got X amount of guys going to the NFL every single season. I've got great connections in the league. They look at our guys first. Believe me when I tell you, we're going to get you ready for the next level. And at the next level, you're going to make a lot of money. And in the meantime, you're going to get a good education. And he was able to snowball them and snuff them. And I guarantee you, some of them were asking, what can you offer me financially? There was an aunt, there was an uncle, there was a pastor. Go watch some of these documentaries. The Best That Never Was is a perfect example. Watch that 30 for 30 on ESPN. Everybody stepping in, trying to control this young man's life. Every single one of them, and without cause. Look at what happened with Cam Newton and that whole situation, and supposedly his uncle and dad and people around him trying to finagle for more money. Me personally, I know that it's always happened, but Nick wants to make it sound like it's never happened, it's never gone on. Now you hear it all the time. That's because back then you probably had guys that were questioning, but to be honest, they just didn't want to get caught. So it was literally the punishment aspect was just enough to keep them out of getting into real trouble and just, I don't think I'm going to ask about that. That's legitimately what was going on to me. And if I'm being really, really honest about it, let's not forget that his own players a few years ago came out and said, hey, look, man, Saban's got a dealership. A bunch of guys were driving those cars around. That big old hot tub in there, let's not pretend that wasn't booster stuff. Somebody wanted his name on something, and he paid for whatever he needed to. And, of course, Nick, unable to go directly and say, hey, look at the hot tub. What he can do, though, is a real slick maneuver. All right, guys, we're going to go to the library now, and on the way to the library is that big-ass hot tub. You can't do that stuff anymore because now it's all out in the open, and you got to be honest about it. See, all these coaches that have to be honest about it now, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to beat this thing. Talking about the state of the mind of the player today and how it's just not his game that he loved anymore. No, what he means by that is I can no longer manipulate these 17 and 18-year-olds into believing anything that I want them to believe and stockpiling my roster full of 5-star recruits. Let's not forget that Nick Saban times the NFL was a massive failure on more than one occasion. Does anybody remember him and Bill Belichick being in Cleveland together? It wasn't just his time in Miami. And really, it's Nick Saban times the SEC. That combination works. I'm not saying that he's not probably the GOAT. I'm not saying that he wasn't a great coach for the time that he was there, but the game passes everybody by at some point. And the game passed Nick Saban by, and he doesn't know what to do about it, so he left. He even said that when he benched Jalen Milroe, he said, look, I like to have my guys play with a little bit of paranoia. I want them to be scared that they might lose their spot. Okay, great. NIL, transfer, I'm outie. You don't get to do that anymore. You don't get to hold fear over anybody's head. That tactic no longer works. Now, listen, people, I'm not saying that this should be an open avenue for young kids to come in and be completely disrespectful. But for years and years and years and years and years and years and years, these collegiate programs held these 18-year-olds absolutely hostage. They now have a newfound freedom that everybody is learning this whole situation kind of as they go along. If the right thing had been done years ago, all this would have evened out a long time ago. But because you waited and waited and waited and waited till finally the U.S. government stepped in and said, if you don't figure this thing out, we're going to take control of the situation. Because you waited for that extreme, you've created this. You caused this three-headed monster. And that's exactly what it is. It's a three-headed monster. It's the learning curve. That's the first head. It's the big money being thrown around. That's the second head. And then the third head is involved with the transfer portal. So the combination of the three has created what looks like a lot of chaos. And I'm not saying that there's not some chaos there, because there absolutely is. But to say that it's completely out of control just because Nico and some other players are sticking up for themselves and going, these universities can't hold me hostage anymore. And look, anybody can spin it any way they want to. If you really think Josh Heupel was the deciding factor and said, no, we're just going to move on from Nico, then you go right on ahead. If that's the case, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We only know what we've been told at this point, right? Let's pretend for argument's sake that Heupel did say, you know what, we're just going to move on from this. He asserted himself to try and make his program into what he wants it to be. And only one of two things are going to happen from here. All the players on that football team are going to get on board and spread the word about what was really going on, or it's going to crash and burn right in his face. That's it. Those are literally the only two options. And Heupel's been having a hard time getting over the hump as it is. And the playoffs were not a good look for, honestly, neither him or Nico. You can say eventual national champion all you want to. Getting smoked like that was a bad look. And I don't think this situation is a good look for Heupel or Tennessee right now, but I could be wrong. We'll see what happens as this whole thing plays out. But I understand and I appreciate Nick Saban's position, but I do not agree with it because I see it for what I believe it really is. And that's all I'm saying. All right, everybody, I am Drew Duncan. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. I'm wherever you're listening to the podcast. Simply tell your device to play the Drew Duncan Sports Show. In the meantime, everybody stay safe. Have a wonderful rest of your night and or day.